let's get you feeling a little more confident in Silhouette Studio with a little tour of version 5 of the software. So this is the free version that you downloaded when you set up your cutting machine. And I just want to go through, we're going to go through the standard or free edition, which is all you need. And I'm going to show you what all the buttons do just to help you get a little more comfortable, so that way you know how to go ahead and get in there and get creating. So let's jump in and get started, shall we? Okay, so here we are. This is the version you see right here, Silhouette Studio version 5. And then let's just look at this first page here. This is the home page. And across here, they give you some ideas of what will you create today. Now, you can tell you can sort of click on these, but right now they don't actually go anywhere. But I think in the future, what these are going to do is open to help you start a card or start some stickers and kind of just make it easier to get started on whatever type of project they're talking about here. Below that, you have recent library files. So if you've signed into Silhouette Studio in your library, those files will show up here. And then at the bottom here, you have the Just For You section. These are design files that you can get from the design store. And again, it looks like they're clickable, but actually they're not. There's a link right here that you can click to go to the design store where you can find these and a lot more files that you can use in your machine. And then down the right side here, this is where they're going to have news and updates. You can see mine's just spinning right now. But this is where Silhouette's going to give you some updates, maybe some blog posts for some new creations and different things, you know, tell you how to buy their different products. And then the other thing I want to show you at the very top here, you have File, Edit, View, Panels, Object, and Help that you will see across all the screens. And then you've got your Home button here. And then right here, I have my starter mode turned on. All that does is give you text under each icon in the Design tab, so that way you know what you're working with. So I'm going to leave that on. So next to that, you have your tab for design. This is where we go to set up all of our projects. Next to that is your library. If you were fortunate enough that you purchased your machine through Silhouette, they potentially gave you some free files that are already in your library. And then you have the send panel here. That's where you go to put all your cut settings in to send your design to the machine to get cut. So let's dive into the design tab. And this is where we're going to do most of our time in this video. So we'll start by going across the top here. Again, you have that File, Edit, View, Panels, Objects, and Help. Under File, you can open a new file. So when it says like open or new, what that's going to do, you click on that and you get multiple tabs, just like you would in an internet browser. You get multiple tabs opened. And then you can do this new project wizard, which would be the same thing as pressing those starter buttons on the home screen. You can choose to start things this way. So if I clicked a card and hit start, it's going to give me the outline of what would be a 5x7 card base. And then you can add things to that. And then you can merge or open your file. That's two different ways that you can bring in a file into Silhouette. Open will open onto a new tab. Merge will merge it onto the current tab you have open. And then you've got your save and save as. You can save to your hard drive, which is what I highly recommend, or you can save to your library. And then some print settings here. In your edit tab, you've got your undo, redo, cut, copy, and paste, paste in front, delete and duplicate, select all, select by color, and your preferences. In your View tab, you've got your zoom, you can rotate, you've got your grid options, you can turn on your print border, your cut border, your registration marks for print and cut, and it'll also, again, another way to go to your library or go to the Sun panel. So something I do need to make very clear. There are multiple ways to do anything inside of Silhouette Studio. So while I might not show you every single way to do it, I'm going to show you the ways that are the most efficient and the easiest and the ones that I like to use, which for me is not clicking on these tabs. I like to either use keyboard shortcuts or I like to right click and you get another tab that comes up. And I'll show you what that looks like later. Okay, so we went through the view and now we have panels. Panels are all of the same things that you're going to find down the right side here, and we will get into those here in a little bit. And then object, again, this is all stuff that you're going to find in some of those panels. And then under your help button, this is the important stuff. You have a user manual. They've got online tutorials and other tutorials that'll show up right in the software for you. And the one that you're going to really want to know is this About Silhouette Studio. Anytime you need to troubleshoot things or you just need to know information about what edition of Silhouette Studio you are using, that About section is going to give that to you. So this is to show you that we're in Silhouette Studio. It's version 5 in the standard or the free edition. And then this is the release that we're on is 5.0.081 and then SS for Silhouette Studio. So that is good information to know anytime you go to any crafting groups or anything. Like, this is one of the first questions anybody wants to know is like, well, what version of Silhouette Studio are you using? Because sometimes there's glitches and we'll tell you to go find a legacy version. So that's those ones. And then let's go across the top here. You've got, again, your home button here that's going to take you back to this front page. We'll come back to design. Right here, this is going to give you a new drawing page that opened a new tab for me. I'm just going to get rid of those tabs. And then it's going to ask me, because I used the new project wizard to open this one, if I want to save my changes. Right now, I'm just going to say no. So now I'm back to just one tab. And then here's another way that you can open files, you can save things, and you can print. This is another way to cut, copy, and paste. You can undo and redo. This one here, and the other thing I want to say is anytime you hover over something, it's going to tell you what it is. So this is select all, deselect all, select by color. Here you can zoom in and out. And then this one, you're going to drag over a shape to zoom in. This one is zooming in and out, like scrolling on your mouse. This one's to pan with your mouse, so you'll click and kind of drag over something. And then this one here gets everything back to this screen here. And I'll show you more how to use all of those here as we kind of dive in more. And then down the left side here, you've got your cursor or your select arrow, and that's just your white arrow that you're used to seeing everywhere. The next one here is point editing. That's not something we're going to get into. That's a more advanced skill that we don't need right now. The next one here is your line segment tool. And you can grab these and see how it gives me a red line and some dots, but then so I'm just clicking where I want to put a dot and then pulling to the next spot. And this is the curved one, so it's letting me do curves. And then when you're ready to be done with it, you have to double tap and then it'll quit. So you have lots of different ways here to make curves. You can do an arc with this one, like that, and then that'll make your arc. So I'm going to what's called rubber band select. So I'm going to click my mouse and drag, and you see that I have this dashed box that goes around. That's called your bounding box. So I'm going to click and drag to select both of these objects. Right now, what you see is this object has a bounding box and this object has a bounding box, and they're all in a larger bounding box. That's telling you that you selected both things. And all I'm going to do is hit delete on my keyboard to get rid of those. The next thing down the side here is your object selection. These are your drawing tools. So these are your basic shapes. You can draw a rectangle. You can grab that same tool. If you hold down the shift key, you can get a perfect square. And then you've got all these different kinds. Now this one here is a little bit special because you get a slider bar that comes with it. So then as I slide this, notice the amount of sides that are on my shape are changing. And then when you get too many, it's a perfect circle. But this is how you can make yourself a nice triangle. And there's my triangle. Again, I'm going to rubber band select all of those things and hit delete. Next is your pen tools or your freehand tools. So you can select on here and you can draw with your mouse. It's a really sorry attempt at my name. Or you've got this other one that does it a little bit smoother. So now when I come in, notice it puts all those little points on there to make things look a little smoother. So you have to draw a little slower so that it can get all those letters. But look at the difference in both of those based on the speed and then the smoothness that it used. So once again, I'm going to rubber band select both of those and hit delete. The next one is one that we can get lost in. This is your text tool. So when you click on this one, you'll notice you get a lot more information up here at the top. And this is all about your text. So what I'm going to do, I have it selected. I'm just going to click here and I'm going to write hello. I'm just going to type things out like normal. And then you'll see it has this green box that goes around it, and there's more things that you can do with it. That's for a later date. But that's how you get your text. And then when you have it selected, maybe I want to do, I'm going to hit enter and then, oops, let's do it at the end. And then, hello, Christy. So now I can come up here at the top and I can change to center my lettering. I can center it left, however you want to do that. Depending on which font you pick, you can make it bold, you can italicize, and you can underline. Those are all standard things you're used to seeing. You've got the size of your font here. Default, this is like if it has a script version. A lot of them, the way that things are set up when you purchase fonts or fonts that are in this kind of a setting, they're always going to be in default mode, because you would have a separate font that would be script style or a caps style. And then here's where you're going to pick your font type or which font that you want, and you'll see that it'll give you all sorts, and it shows you what they look like. And then here you can fill in your font with a color, and then you can also give it an outline color, or we call that a line color. And then right here you can thicken your line color. And then here you can change what that outline looks like. So now I'm going to come up here and grab my drag over shape tool, and I'm going to click. And now that really zoomed me into what I had clicked on. But now if I change that line description to different things, it gives it a different look. And then I can change the thickness of that, or I can turn it all the way back down. So that's with your text tools, gives you through some of that. The next one down the line here is a sticky note. You just have to click. So what I like to do with a sticky note is this is where I like to keep track of information. So maybe I decided that I really like this autumn and November. So I might just write a little note here that says the font name. If I could spell. And that's just personal notes for me to know, because when you use a script font, before you go to cut it out, you would have to weld it together, making it no longer editable. So those sticky notes can sometimes be helpful when you come back to look at this later if you need to recreate it or create something different, but want, that same, maybe it needs to say Hello Santa instead of Hello Christie. Then we would have the font, then we would know there. And the cool thing is, when you save this file to your library, this sticky note stays with it. And I really like that. So under your sticky note, you have the eraser tool, which up at the top here, again, this bar has changed. And what I can do here is I can change to either let it do a solid erase, it can erase just the outline, or right now you see I have a tiny circle, and I can decide I want it to make it square, and then I can come over here and increase the size of my shape, and then you're just gonna click and erase, and it got rid of it. The next one here is the knife tool, and it works slightly similar to your eraser. Again, you have things up here, and I like to do mine in auto apply, meaning as soon as I unclick, it will automatically cut. So I'm going to do a solid straight cut, and I'm going to cut right through this. You need to start outside and cut all the way through to the outside. I'm going to let go. I did a click and drag, and now you can see, we'll zoom in here again, that it put that line right where that was. So now, because these are individual letters, we have not made this one complete word yet, all of these parts are coming apart. So that's what the knife tool does. I'm just going to zoom back out here a little bit. Nope. And then down here is your library. Now, I could do an entire video on this library, and we're not really going to get into that here, but I just want to show you this is your library where you have your different fonts that you've purchased through Silhouette Studio, the Silhouette Design Store, any designs that you've purchased. So this one here, free with machine. I have multiple cameos, so I have multiple designs, but this is where you'll find the designs that they've given you. And then you can click, you can double tap, and that will bring it into your page that you're working on, or you can click and drag, and that will also bring it in. Oh, and I clicked too many times and it went spastic. So I'm going to zoom out. We've got lots of options here. It brought all sorts of things. I'm just going to get rid of this. Oh, it brought it in multiple times. So it gives you all these different pieces with this one, with this design. Okay, so that is the left side panel. We've talked about what's across the top. Now the fun stuff is what happens on the right side panel. So let's jump into those. So the first one here is your page setup. And this is where you choose what machine you're using. Typically you're going to do your feed type is going to be manual. Your cutting mat. So right now this is what I'm using for the sticky mat. Or you can change this if you're using the electrostatic mat. It'll change what the mat looks like on your screen. And then your media size is the material that you're using. It usually goes to 12 by 12, or typically you can do a letter size is probably the other most common. Or you can customize it here with this dragger, or you can type it in. The other things that you can do on this page setup is you can decide if you want it to be portrait or landscape. So let me change this back to the standard sticky mat, and I'm going to leave that out as letter. So right now it's in portrait, which is normally what you're going to use. But if I turn it to landscape, notice how it changed. So now my width is 11 and my height is 8.5. So it switched from landscape to portrait. And then the transparency. So see how you can see that grid line that's from the sticky mat? You can see that through my material. That's because I've got my transparency turned down. So the more you turn it down, the less you're going to see through it. And the more you turn it up, the more you're going to see through it. And then at the bottom here, you can pick colors. And you can decide that you want your mat to be a different color perhaps. And then again, you can rotate the view of how you're looking at your mat. Now the arrow is what goes in the machine first. So if you wanted to go crazy and do something different, you can do it like that. But you'll notice it rotated everything, even my sticky note. When I went sideways, my sticky note, let's zoom back out, is way down here. So it changes everything on your screen. The next tab on your page setup is your grid. So if you want grid lines on your working station, we call this your artboard, you can do that here. You can show the grid. And then down here you have grid settings. You can change the color of it, change the divisions and the spacing of your grid. And then the other thing that they have on here, I'm going to turn that off. You have your cut border, which is this red line that goes around my entire artboard. And then you can have your print border, which is this gray line. And those are really important when you're doing print and cut projects. You need to make sure that everything you're printing is within your print border. And then you've got other fancy things here too. You can do your snap to grid, meaning everything when you have your grid on is going to snap to those grid lines, and it won't really let you see how it moves in special increments. So that's all your page setup. Oh, actually I want to turn that grid off. I find it distracting. And then you have your fill panel. So here's another place. Instead of doing it up here, you can come over here. You can select your object and fill it with a color. You can fill it with a gradient, and you can fill it with a pattern. And then you have again on this side your line style panel, which is the same as what this was right here. And then your next button here is the color, which is the same as right here, picking that line color. And then you can put in hex codes in any of those if you need a specific color. The next button here is your trace panel. This is what you're going to use if you have a picture or a PNG file and you want to turn it into a cuttable file. You would go through here and trace an object. Again, this is something that I would do a total separate video on, but just kind of give you familiar with what all these things do. So that's your trace panel. The next one down is your transform panel. And I'm going to delete that on my screen. We're going to delete this. And I'm just going to bring in a basic shape here. That's not really a basic shape, but it'll work. Okay, so there's our shape. So your transform panel is where you can go through here and you can use your alignment tools. You can distribute things. You can center it to the page. You can center, you have to click on it first, and then you can center it to the page, or if you have multiple objects, you can center them together. And then here's another way you can scale things. So if I want to scale it larger, I can do 50% that scaled it down, or 300% made it bigger. And here you can rotate your objects. So if I want to rotate by a certain amount, all of these buttons can also be found under, is it maybe view, one of these, object, under object. You can find the same object, rotate, align, arrange, all these same things. And then you have your replicate panel. So if I want to make a copy of this, the fun thing is I can make multiple copies and rotate them around. That's really fun if you wanted to make, so let's say you took an oval and you made multiple copies just like they're showing here. And let's give those a color. And then now what we could do is we can come over to our modify panel and we can weld, which is going to make it all one shape. So now it's one shape, and now we just made a flower using that replicate panel. Or you can duplicate making more copies. You can do one, or you can use some of these buttons and make a column of 3. I like to use these when I want to fill the page, when I'm making multiples of the same thing. Or if you're working with heat transfer vinyl, you need to mirror your design before you cut it, so it cuts on the back side. So what that does is if it starts on this edge here, and what it's going to do is flip it on that side and mirror that design. So let me show you. So when I hit mirror, you see how these 2 points stayed the same and it just flipped it over the other side. From there, we have a more in-depth font panel. This will, again, you would have to have a font selected. So like right here, I have some text. Is it going to let me do that? Nope. There it goes. I think my computer is just a little bit slow. So I'm going to write out hello. So again, just like we did over here, and then pulling from up here, we can click on this. You can do it up here, or you can come down the side here and then pick your font. You can align it here. Here you can do line spacing and character spacing. Character spacing will space those letters out. And then you also have your kerning, which is a little bit more involved, not something we need to get into here. The next button down is your print and cut button. So here's where you're going to turn on your registration marks for print and cuts. And then you can go through all of that again. This is a whole separate video series that we would do on print and cut. And then I already gave you a sneak peek into the modify panel. This is what you're going to use to turn what you already have into more shapes. You can, like what we did here, we took all of those ovals and welded them together to make a new shape. Now I could come in and I can subtract that shape from what's behind it. And now it has a cutout of that on there, and it's got all these different things to help you do stuff like that. The button below that is your offset. You're going to use this mostly probably with your text. So if I need to thicken up a font, so let's pick a thinner font here. This one's really thin, and let me give this a color just to make it a little easier. So if I do an offset, that puts, see in the red, it puts it around the outside. Then you can manage how big that offset is. And then you hit apply, and now you have this offset, which you could then fill with a different color, and now you have a whole new look to what you just did. It's also good if you're doing print and cuts. Maybe you want to do an outline that you cut so that you have a white gap on a sticker, or there's lots of uses for it. Again, that's a whole different video. And then the last little bits here, you have this plus sign that says show more. When you click that, it's going to give you a few more that are down the side here. You have your sketch and stipple. This is what you're going to do to fill in for sketching so that you can use your sketch pens on your cutting machine. You would need to fill in your design or text, and you would do that with these. And then the next one down there is your specialty tools. These are for the Cameo 5, Curio 2, and Portrait. I think we're on 4, is that right? These are the specialty tools. You have your embossing, you have your emboss and score, you have your power engraving, which is for the curio only, your heat pens, your punch tool, again, that's another curio only, your leather carver, and then this 3D one, I believe is, yeah, just for the Alta where you can make, it's a 3D printer, so that's a whole different thing. And then when you did that, so the next down, we have our pick scan mat. So this is, again, another specialty thing that would be a whole separate video, but this is what you can do. You can take a picture, and then it's basically a simplified version of a print and cut. It has those registration marks already on. This is a special mat, and then you'd put your material on there, and then you take a picture, and it brings it up on the screen so you can easily cut out of scraps or whatever you need to do with that. Your next panel here is your image effects. These image effects are really only appropriate for things that you're printing, because the effects don't play any difference for anything that you're cutting. Because even though I have this in this color, I can put whatever color material I want on my machine. It's just going to cut this shape. So these image effects are only for printing. And then the last one on here is your pop-up panel. So this is for making pop-up cards. Get rid of all this here. So what it's going to do is it's going to help you make a 3D pop-up card. And again, this would be a completely separate video of how to use that pop-up panel. I hope that gives you a little more confidence using Silhouette Studio now that you've got an overview of all the buttons. Before you go, make sure you take my free Silhouette Skill Path quiz. In 60 seconds, it tells you exactly where you are on your crafting journey and what your next step should be. No overwhelm, no waste, just a clear path forward. So again, it's my free Silhouette Skill Path quiz, and it's only a few questions, and it'll bring you clarity and get you closer to mastering your silhouette.